Many of our nation's streams and rivers are used for generating electricity for homes and businesses. When power companies use public water resources for generating power, they must be licensed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. On the Nantahala and Tuckasegee rivers in the mountains of western North Carolina, Duke Power Company owns and operates several reservoirs and hydropower stations. The federal licenses on these facilities will expire soon. In granting new licenses, FERC can require Duke Power to change river flows to protect fish and other aquatic life, raise or lower reservoir levels, provide more access for recreation, and even remove dams. Because the stakes are so high, Duke Power set in motion a process to bring together a broad spectrum of stakeholders, many with competing interests, and negotiate the conditions for the new licenses. People who live in these river basins, together with scientists, conservationists, river outfitters, and business people, worked together over 3 years to arrive at a consensus agreement that prescribes new river flows, reservoir levels, and recreation opportunities on the Nantahala and Tuckasegee rivers.
We know that a lot of people besides just Duke depend on these public resources, the rivers that these hydro stations are on. We wanted to get the input of those people that are closest to the resource, the people that actually live here and the people that use the resources, to make sure that we understood what their needs were.
We just wanted to provide a balance for all the uses of the water, the natural resource of water, which is probably one of the most important resources we have in western North Carolina along with its people.
Steve Reed with the North Carolina Division of Water Resources came to us about 3 years ago now with a suggestion that we organize a stakeholder team on the Tuckasegee River to help us get stakeholder input into the relicensing process.
I approached Duke Power, Nantahala area, about the concept, and they were a little warm, I guess, at first, and then decided to give it a try to see if that would provide benefits.
I am president of Friends of Lake Glenville, which is the lake association at Lake Glenville. I've represented private property owners. This end of the county is the major contributor to the tax base of Jackson County. And what we were concerned, or I was concerned with, that we don't damage the property values or the ability to have that kind of a tax base for Jackson County. Probably the most important issues had to do with the lake. The control of nuisances, the secure and safety of the adjoining property owners around the lake, but also maintaining low cost of power.
The homeowners along the lake wanted to make sure that the water levels didn't get too high nor too low. For those of us who live downstream on the rivers itself, we were most interested in maintaining a kind of equal flow within the river. This has become one of the premier trout fishing streams in the eastern part of the United States. One of our concerns was in this relicensing project was to make certain that we could begin to get increases in minimum flows to allow enough oxygenation and holdover trout within the river.
It's important to the Wildlife Federation because this license lasts from anywhere between 30 to 50 years. And it is probably one of the single most important decisions that is made around wildlife and its habitat.
Major issues were habitat protection, enhancement, and also recreational opportunities for anglers and hunters and boaters. Trying to get more stable lake levels, and on the rivers trying to get more and more natural flows in the rivers.
Water quality has always been important as far as agriculture is concerned up here, but you know, agriculture is pretty much going away, and so the economics of tourism is very important to western North Carolina. I did see where on a news article on TV this past week that NOC is one of the top 10 outdoor recreation companies in the United States, so certainly it has a tremendous impact to the region economically.
I work for an organization called American Whitewater. Generally speaking, our interests were river access, free public river access, river conservation, which has a variety of issues in it, such as water quality, watershed integrity, and flow. Essentially, any problem that a whitewater boater or whitewater river has, we deal with. We're often perceived when we go into these processes and just everywhere as kind of a bunch of yahoos. You know, we're just yelling and screaming and, you know, out there just being wild, crazy recreationalists. But really, for a lot of people, there's a lot of serenity and chaos.
There's conflicts between different interests, if you will. The lake level folks up in the summertime want their lake high enough so that they can swim and enjoy their dock. At the same time, in recent years, those have been very dry months, and Duke needs water to power their generators, and the fishermen want to be able to fish in the river. How do you do all of those things at the same time?
Without being a part of this process, we would not have the ability to, in some ways, control what was going to happen with the lake and downriver.
I started the stakeholder meetings at the same time I started the job. So the very first thing I did was leave graduate school in Montana, drive across the country, and I found myself in a room with, 40, 50 older, very knowledgeable, very experienced people that were discussing these very complex issues. And really, it was amazing. I had never seen a process quite like this one, where there were such diverse issues in one place, all working on the same issues. And I thought, how is this going to work out,
And you've got 30 to as many as 50 people in the room at one time, all of them feeling like they understand their needs, but not necessarily the needs of others, and figuring out how to express what their needs are without putting others on the defensive. That was a big challenge.
The first couple of meetings of the stakeholders were quite chaotic. It was a time when everybody was trying to learn what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, and to come up with a charter of how we were going to operate.
In the beginning, we were establishing the charter, which became sort of a joke with the group because we would say, "Oh no, not the charter again." As it turned out, that was a very most important times we spent, because the charter ended up being what the entire group went by in the end, when we were ready to go into the consensus agreement.
The process was very labor intensive. It required a lot of travel, a lot of time, a lot of meetings.
People dropped out. There were day-long meetings, so a lot of people could not give up that kind of time.
And very often it was very frustrating in those initial meetings because you really felt you weren't getting a whole lot accomplished. But in fact, as you look back now onto that, you realize that you were laying the groundwork for 3 years of future studies together.
I think in the long run, trust becomes an issue. I think early in the stages it was the whole issue of whether you can trust Duke.
The process works when people really want to understand each other's interests, when they really want to work towards a solution. And that was more evident in some of the groups than in others. If everyone's kind of holding their cards close to their vest, you're just kind of wasting your time.
There were times that I can remember, a year or two down the road in the process where I thought, I'm just not sure we're going to get there.
If this was not successful, then we could use the traditional FERC relicensing process. That is, each individual or group could then petition FERC requesting certain changes to be made in what Duke Power had proposed. So that option was available to anyone who did not sign this particular agreement.
We spent some time early on getting people out on the rivers and on the reservoir so they would understand the interests of the other groups. We had whitewater boaters that had probably never been on the reservoirs out on pontoon boats with some of the lake residents. We had lake residents that had lived in the county all their life and had never been on the rivers, going down the rivers in rafts to try to get some firsthand knowledge about the resource.
It was during those times that I really got to know folks, really got an understanding for what their interest was, or not only their interest, but their passion for it and their depth of their thinking process, what they actually wanted from the water resource. And it was a good education for me.
A lot of history and local knowledge is very important in understanding maybe what's lying behind people's interests. Something that happened 50 years ago maybe helps lead them in a direction that maybe you weren't expecting.
There was a challenge to understand some of this technical material that we were dealing with.
The vast bulk of people on the committee had no background in science.
A big part of every team agenda was to have a technical leadership team come in and present the results. Here's what we found from this fisheries issue. And to boil it down into facts that stakeholders could use to make their decisions on.
It was just another day at college. It was like you go, you take notes, you pay attention, you ask questions. You know, if you don't understand something, you say, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, what was that all about?
It's just a matter of doing your homework, paying attention, listening to what people have to say, depending on our state resource people. The state resource people were very good, and the federal folks were very good. We depended on them a lot in terms of asking them questions of clarification and to develop our understanding. And so it's a matter of doing your homework and asking the questions when you run into those areas that you don't know anything about.
You had to pay attention, and you needed to be there.
Duke Power Nantahala area brought forth a trial balloon, which was a version of a set of comprehensive alternatives that they thought would produce significant benefits, and the team really kind of accelerated when they started working on that to see how that met each other's interest, and we moved forward from there.
We put out the first proposal and got a lot of reaction, initially not all positive, but that gave us a place to start negotiating from, and I think that was a big benefit to the process.
That was modified probably every month for a number of months. We worked towards last spring trying to reach a consensus agreement, which really had all the substantive parts of a settlement agreement.
I think most folks would tell you that the last 2 or 3 months of the negotiation seemed pretty pushed. And I'm not sure that will ever not be the case. So we had a deadline and we had to get there, and yeah, that causes some folks to feel hurried maybe, but it's necessary. And that's what brought us to a conclusion, is having that deadline.
I guess it was a little rushed in the end, and it always will be. And it was really a matter of Duke proposing their trial balloons or their proposed consensus agreements. And without them kind of taking that leadership role and trying to integrate proposals that people sent to them, and then saying, all right, how about this? Without some body doing that, I think it made sense for Duke to do it because they were the ones that actually were going to have to write the check and say yes in the end. Without that, we couldn't have done it.
Near the end, when we were actually negotiating a settlement agreement, there were long periods of time in which nothing was accomplished fruitfully, but in the end, people actually gave a little bit and were able to resolve some of the very sticky issues.
I think Duke agreed to some things that 2 years ago they would have said were impossible. I mean, that we're never going to go there. And I think the environmental community agreed to some things that it probably wouldn't have agreed to 2 years earlier either. So we would have been at an impasse. But it is the sitting there and the working through it and the gathering of the information, the interaction of the people, and an ongoing conversation over a long period of time. And when you thrash through that stuff and stick with it, then eventually you have a deadline and we have to decide.
As long as you had a team of individuals who were looking at the health of the river and the watershed in which it flows, those people then were able to give a little on some of the points that they were steadfast in. And the end result is that give and take at the end is what I believe made the process work. I believe that the issues that the vast majority of the stakeholders in both the Nantahala and the Tuckasegee watersheds were met.
I think it was very successful. And when you look at the percentages, I guess, of the total stakeholders that we have that signed in either in favor of or being willing to live with the consensus agreement, 87% of the folks involved did.
From our perspective, it was successful. We felt like as an agency we accomplished those things that were of most importance to us.
I don't think we did reach agreement because we have a great number of people, of stakeholders that have fived out of the process. So to say we really reached agreement would not be true. I would come away with a feeling that there were people on the stakeholder team that were there to take, and then there were people that were expected to give. And my group gave a lot.
So I don't think everybody got it in the final consensus agreement. I don't think everybody got everything they wanted. I know Duke Power didn't. I know a lot of the other groups didn't.
I feel that my interests got met more or less. Not all of them, not the way I wanted them to, but I walked away going, all right, that kind of worked. It's pretty balanced.
The majority of the stakeholders on both teams signed the consensus agreement and are moving towards the settlement agreement.
Why did I sign? Because probably the same reason everybody else signed. They felt like they'd get more out of the agreement than they would from going to FERC. That's the honest opinion that everybody will give, is that it made more sense than going to FERC.
With the new agreement that we've signed with Duke, they will increase the minimum flow rates in the river during the summer months when the water is very low. And they will provide opportunities for fishermen and boaters along the main stem to use the recreational facilities of the river throughout the summer months in a fashion that we can all live with.
In each watershed there'll be some changes. There'll be a different recreational flow schedule. The wintertime reservoir drawdowns will be less than they have been in the past. There'll be more recreational facilities for camping, for bank fishing, for boat launching, for swimming, wildlife viewing, and there'll also be more access, particularly to the Tuckasegee River downstream from our hydro projects.
I would say, overall, I have a great respect for everyone that was on that stakeholder team. I think this is a very intelligent group, a very professional group.
I think what makes it work is staying together, working at it month after month, getting to know each other, getting to find out where people's interests are, finding out who it is that you can trust, where the expertise is, what is the true story as opposed to what is somebody's opinion of what the story is. The science helps. And I think it is the coming to the table with an agreement that we are going to bargain in good faith. If you come to the table thinking that you're going to get everything that you want no matter what, no matter who I have to take advantage of, then you're going to poison the process. But if you can come to the table fair-minded, if you will, with the idea that I'm willing to listen, I will come to understand the difference between my interests and my positions, and I'll work on my interests, and I'll stay away from positions, and I will, to the best I can, trust that others are going to deal in good faith also. That's the hardest part.
Every hydro licensee has to make some decisions about how they're going to set up their process, but I would recommend to all of them to figure out a way to get the people that have an interest in your project involved, to get that interest expressed to you early enough that you can do something about it yourself, and that you don't have to have the regulator come tell you how to do things. Local decisions are always, I believe, going to be better.
I think in the end, everybody gained something, everyone lost something. We improved the quality of water from Trout Unlimited's perspective. The lake owners got the levels in the waters that they wanted. Duke Power gained some in the respect that we developed a greater appreciation and understanding of what Duke did. They were great partners to be with in this process, but they also lost a little, and that is they will lose some capacity to generate electrical power, make money, and they were graceful about that. And I think in the end, since everyone gave a little, took a little, it was a successful endeavor.
It's a huge reason why I do the work that I do, is that I love rivers, and I love them because I experience them on a regular and intimate basis of just being out in them and seeing the water quality and tasting it in my, in my mouth when I flip over, and just seeing intact systems and traveling, and really, wanting to do good things for the rivers because I care about them.